Hello, I am Adam Miller. I am the Race and Gender in the Built Environment Fellow at University of Texas Austin School of Architecture. I want to say thanks to Tate, Wei-Ling, and Andrew for putting this event together and allowing me the opportunity to present to you all. So this presentation is titled The Format of Taste. So what is the format of good taste? Taste is something that is not always directly addressed in architecture, but it is always in the background. Architecture is a taste culture. It delimits the field of what gets to count as architecture and what does not, what counts as beautiful and ugly, what counts as good taste. As paradigms in our aesthetic discourse, the beautiful and its foil, the ugly, produce material consequences for the world. These aesthetic categories are the methodology for shaping the built environment, destroying, delaying, obscuring if ugly, or preserving, impelling, promulgating if beautiful. Taste shapes the built environment because tastes, according to Pierre Bourdieu, are first and foremost distastes, disgust provoked by horror or visceral intolerance for the taste of others. How then can we as architects and educators make space for the taste of others? In particular, how can we encourage the development of the tastes of our students rather than reformatting them to match our own? How might this require a reformatting of what educators value in architectural aesthetics? How can we not just tolerate but find value in distastes, the tastes of peoples, places, and cultures that are not our own, to expand and foster complex aesthetics as diverse as our students? I'm showing images of some iconic representative of modernism's beauty in their downfall. The Brutalist Prentice Hospital in Chicago here, and the Pruitt-Igoe Affordable Housing Project in St. Louis later on, being demolished to show how what has once been considered the apex of tastefulness has proven inadequate to meet their own claims to social value. Beautiful and ugly have material and cultural consequences for the built environment. One of the worst myths of modern architecture has been that architecture is autonomous or apolitical. A look to material culture says otherwise. The beautiful has historically been constructed as public, masculine, straight, and white, with the ugly as its other, thus leaving many out of the equation, silenced or subjected. While the connection between masculinity and beauty may not seem immediately obvious, it is clearer when considering the post-industrial aesthetics of modernism, its glorification of sleek masculine monumentality, and the repudiation of the ornamental, curvaceous, and non-Western aesthetics, coded as feminine, weak, inferior. Modernism, too, is racialized and coded white. Architecture has always been political, and one aspect of its politics lies in architecture's role in the construction of good taste and an equivalence between good taste and social value. I'm interested in the politics of taste, its othering principles, so that we can reconfigure the common sense for a more equitable world. To do so means reapproaching what is considered good taste. People have told me I like bad taste, which I think is funny because they never say that I have bad taste, just that I like it. Perhaps I'm shielded from having bad taste because of my fancy degrees. I'm interested in understanding why things are considered bad taste in the first place, and who is said to have it, and who is allowed to like it. I have an interest in the mechanisms of how taste becomes style and how styles go out of fashion. In the words of Denise Scott Brown, there's always a reaction against the style of the most recent past. In my design practice, New Stars, I've been exploring my interest in bad taste, designing stage productions for a music festival in Oakland, California, which happens to be hosted by queer film legend and Pope of Trash, John Waters. For Waters, taste is style, and to know bad taste, you must have been taught the rules of the tyranny of good taste. so that you can learn to break them. Taste is how you define yourself against the world. This is where taste gets political. The organization of taste is the organization of society, and the organization of society is the structure of power in our society. Architecture houses and reproduces good taste, and good taste is not just objective or subjective. It is the systems of power working on our aesthetic sensibilities and reproducing themselves through architecture and design. Modernity has a specific kind of subject it desires to have in power. So it reproduces this subject through good taste to keep him in power. Taste is how we form social groups in common and define within that community a common sense, or what makes sense to the group, to distinguish between what is sensible and what is insensible. For Rancière, this is the politics of aesthetics. It is the struggle over the dividing line between what can be heard as sensible and what is discarded as noise. I think a very urgent issue is that there has been a slippage between what is truthful and what is tasteful, and this is in part due to many of our institutions failing us. We can see how this slippage has led to societal division. How have architects, as agents and shapers of material culture and the institutionalization and formatting of good taste, participated in this slippage? Many of us today are grappling with this question. If we can address these structural challenges, the discipline and education of architecture can participate in remediating trust and expanding participation in the production of the built environment. Demands from those who do not usually fit the image of what an architect is supposed to look like are finally starting to be heard rather than being tuned out as noise. Demands from students and practitioners alike across the nation have been sounded to address the structural barriers to entering and staying in architecture in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. This past year, we have seen how the othering aspects of architecture urgently require a collective redress. To make space for difference within our field, we must also recognize the construction of beautiful and ugly and the limitations that a binary aesthetic logic have if we're going to expand what success can mean and look like. While architecture has been a predominantly straight, masculine, white field, that has the potential to change and is changing. A 2018 study of the experience of architecture graduates, Equity by Design, as you see here, the largest study of its kind, found that 46% of its respondents identified as female, 53% as male, 1% as non-binary, and of those, 80% were white and 90% were straight. We continue to lack detailed statistics around those identifying as non-binary, gender nonconforming, or trans. But looking at age, the demographics become significantly more female and more racially diverse the younger that you look at the graph along age, suggesting that the future for the diverse leadership of our profession is possible if we can address the structural challenges along the way. And one of those structural barriers is what is allowed to be considered good taste. What is allowed to be considered valuable for architectural inquiry? If architecture exists in part as an expertise of taste, then a major role of architectural education has been to intervene to reconfigure students' tastes towards the instructor's own taste as a model. We can see how that follows a hierarchical relationship of knowledge from instructor to student. We can also see how this might stop in its tracks, sideline, or alienate those students whose tastes do not fit the proper form of beauty. When we assess form as instructors, we tend to assess it in terms of what we see as beautiful, because it produces for us a kind of pleasure, even if we do not call beauty by its name. And for quite some time, as Dinah Ingrest and Mabel O. Wilson and others have described, what is beautiful in architecture tends to be Western, white, masculine, or public. And as such, students are asked to chase this image of success, a condition of success that tends to favor those that easily identify with it, or already fit its image. One way to expand participation in architecture as a discipline is to make space for the tastes of others. That means making space for different images of success and legitimating non-normative frameworks for value. This means to decenter the beautiful, ugly binary's position as the central aesthetic metric of value and expand our lexicon to better understand and design for communities in difference. To think queerly might be to consider a conceptual space beyond binary thinking. This is a queer space within architecture. Queer thinking resists duality and allows for a decentering of a single aesthetic paradigm, making space for aesthetic difference. This recognition of the difference in taste and the potential design implications of those tastes is what I'm thinking of as the solidarity of tastes. Solidarity is a unity while maintaining and recognizing difference, a discordant whole. And this unity in recognizing difference is something that I think has real implications for us, material consequences for us. In my teaching, students are asked to design for discordant wholes and to critically analyze and understand the value of their own tastes and experiences from which to identify and develop a design logic. Students turn to the uncommon senses, the vernacular, the minor, to concepts like cute, awkward, dumpy, cringy, sexy, sleek, cozy, messy, basic, organic, gauche, etc. The ad hoc nature of our social reality produces complexity in between us already. Vernacular aesthetic discourses are well suited to describe this complex built environment, where our institutionalized language instead fails us. It is difficult to describe most things as beautiful or, for that matter, ugly. This is where minor aesthetics come in handy, born from vernacular discourse. They can allow us to see different, more nuanced and complex frameworks for reading and designing for a world that accommodates a plurality of tastes, peoples, and places. I'm showing you here some student work from my course, Dragging Modernity, which I taught at UT Austin School of Architecture in spring 2020. Minor aesthetic paradigms are culled from vernacular culture and discursively malleable. In a solidarity of tastes, design is born from the synchronicity of the designer, their found objects and tastes, and material culture at large. The students find relationships and affinities between people, places, and things, which initially seem irreconcilable until it isn't. Students design for the formal significations, material connotations, programmatic implications, and political motivations of each aesthetic paradigm, and as groups then identify common ground within those criteria to reach a discordant whole, a solidarity of tastes. This is an unformatting of taste, and through this unformatting, students produce language that resists its own internal unity. Small steps to resisting co-optation by the forces of capitalism and heteronormativity. This unformatting of taste is a vital part of the united front needed to combat the stultifying forces that have historically worked to keep women, queers, people of color, and the working class out of architecture. The field of architecture should be open to anyone to join in the discourse as an expert of material culture. Learning from uncommon senses and designing for minor aesthetic paradigms is important to me as an educator. If we wish for a more equitable world, we should not attempt to replace the center currently held by beauty and ugly with another term or concept, but rather expand upon what a world without a center, but designing for a periphery of aesthetics might afford. Unformatting good taste can elucidate new kinds of value in overlooked, forgotten, repressed, and oppressed parts of our communities. An enhanced periphery of tastes resists the power that the beautiful, ugly binary holds over us and its possible dislocation to another duality. Could a solidarity of non-normative tastes liberate us from an over-reliance on pleasure and disgust in shaping the built environment. Thank you very much. And now I'm just going to give you some credits on the last page for the student work. Thank you.